Are all the way live. Hello and welcome to my graveyard. I am your host of the evening, the Cemetery Man from Salem, Mass. Always taking names of kicking candy ass. Live in living color here with you on Grande's Graveyard. And here we are tonight, ladies and gents. Last week was a bunch of fun talking all things Mr. Dario Argento, the master of the macabre. And this week we turn to yet another master of the macabre. And interesting thing about this guy is I am pretty sure, aside from Carrie and The Shining, I have not really touched on most of his films on my channel to this point. And the man in question is horror's probably most famous author slash novelist slash screenplay writer in one, Stephen King. Stephen King is one of the biggest names in horror movie history, is certainly one of the biggest writing names in the past 40 years. I mean, he just burst onto the scene with Carrie in 1977. That movie just made him a star overnight, and everybody wanted to then, in turn, adapt Stephen King novels into films. And thus, The Shining came out. Thus, movies like Children of the Corn came out. Movies like The Dead Zone came out. And Stephen King just was on fire in the early 80s and even pretty much throughout the late 80s to throughout the 90s to even hell this day. I mean, Doctor Sleep just came out last year. Cell, which was a bad movie, but 1408. To this day, there are still people making Stephen King adaptations. Gerald's Game, Rose Red. All these movies that it's actually kind of insane how they can get this much content out of one writer. And I thought that's always the thing with Stephen King is even though there are some bad stories, there's always, a demand for the guy. He's one of horror's most notorious individuals, characters, and overall just creative minds. And that's why I figured it's been a damn crime that I haven't delved into much Stephen King stuff. I mean, I didn't know where to start either. I was like, do I start with something that people know, like Stephen King's It? Do I go more obscure? And me being me, I always want to go more obscure. I always want to go in a different route, and to talk about stuff that's not as much talked about or as highly mentioned. And that's why this episode I decided to pick two lesser talked about Stephen King films that I really am a big fan of both. We have somebody here in the chat is Devin Hurd, my dude, the Master of Fear. What's going on, my friend? Hope all is well with you, buddy. I saw Need Gore got his channel back finally, so I was really, really happy to see that. Hashtag reinstate Need Gore. He's now, you can find him here now. I could put it in the description after I'm off the air. But yeah, Need Gore has his channel back now, which is really cool. It's now King Need Gore, and he did a really funny video of him talking about like some of his favorite horror movies and stuff. He posted that, so I'm really happy for Corey. Corey, if you're listening, really happy you have your channel back, and I'm sure you'll blow the subscriber number out of the water in no time. It's going to take patience, it's going to take time, but I'm sure you have both of those things. But yeah, so I was sitting here pondering what Stephen King films do I want to discuss here. Oh, we got somebody else in the chat. The Trashed Picture Show. Cat's Eye is a kick-ass movie. I'd have to agree with you, man. I am a huge fan of Cat's Eye, and I can stop keeping y'all in suspense. We're talking about Cat's Eye on the show from 1985, directed by Lewis Teague, and we'll get right into that. That's going to lead off the show. And believe it or not, see, this was completely coincidental until I did my homework. This movie was originally going to have three stories, and I'm sorry, this movie was originally going to have four stories. They ended up cutting one out and they went with three. In similar vein to Creepshow Part 2, where they cut a story out with the evil cat, and then that story shows up in Tales from the Dark Side, the movie. However, this movie, the story that they cut, Dino De Laurentiis, the producer, he said, I want this story that we're going to cut to be its own goddamn movie. And years later, about 6 years later, Tim Matheson starred in Sometimes They Come Back, which was the story that was cut from this movie, and they made it feature length, and they got good old Tom Mcloughlin to direct it from Friday the 13th Part 6 fame, and he's an excellent filmmaker. I always forget what the hell was the other film. I think One Dark Night, if I'm not mistaken. I might have botched the title, but that's a really, really good one too, from like 80, I want to say 85, or maybe, I forget what year One Dark Night came out, but that's another really good movie. Tom Mcloughlin was just an awesome gothic horror guy, and I figured these would be two fun ones to discuss. And then when I found out that they were kind of connected, I figured, why the hell not? I figured that would be a really fun way to go about this. Hello, watching Creepshow 2. Romero's writing is some of the best in that sequel. Aiden, welcome to the show. And dude, it's funny. I had the privilege of seeing Creepshow 2 back in, I think, a couple years ago in the all night horror movie marathon on 35 millimeter. It was incredible to see that movie with a crowd. And I'll never forget where Romero's name popped up, screenplay by George Romero. The theater just popped, man. It's so incredible to me how over Stephen King and George Romero are with the horror community, because it's nice to know, number one, that they were friends. It's nice to know, number two, that they created the entity that was Creepshow. And I love that Stephen King shows up as a bit role, the truck driver in the Hitchhiker segment in Creepshow 2. Of course, Jordy Verrill in Part 1. Those are two guys that really loved horror, and those are two guys that loved EC comics and short stories. And Creepshow 2, man, I think it's a pretty underrated movie. I know it doesn't really get its just desserts. It doesn't really get its due. But, man, I don't know. One of these days I'm going to do a complete Creepshow retrospective, maybe when the next season of Creepshow debuts, because I'd enjoy talking about those movies. I've discussed Part 1 and Part 2 on other shows individually, but I think it would be fun to do an entire retrospective on that. So definitely going to talk about Creepshow somewhere down the line. Going more obscure is always better, because not most people talk about obscure movies. The mainstream ones, everyone pretty much talks about. Exactly. Yeah, granted, I've already talked about Carrie and The Shining, but I figured, why not talk about two lesser talked about movies? And both of these really, I think, are good, number one, and number two, they really don't get talked about, especially the second movie. Cat's Eye, I've seen fans. Granted, they're few and far between. Sometimes they come back. Nobody mentions sometimes they come back. If anything, they always mention the sequel with Hilary Swank, and I think it's the guy from Tremors, Michael Gross. They always remember those movies. So interesting. I don't know why that movie seems more remembered. I feel bad, but I watched Body Bags the other night. It was kind of a letdown. I honestly like Body Bags, but I can see why. I mean, it's definitely more fun than serious. Like, it's definitely more comedic horror than it is straight up horror. And I could see how that could be a complete turn off for some people. And honestly, I could see why. I really, believe it or not, I like the opening segment the best, in the gas station with Carradine and all that shit. I love the opening segment. I think that's one of those anthologies. I think if you reverse the order, it's better. Like, I like the first segment the best, segment the second best, and then the third segment probably the least, with Mark Hamill in the Eye, the one that Toby Hooper directed. It's weird if you switch the order of those movies, I think, or the segments, I should say, I think that movie feels a lot better, in my humble opinion. Too bad Creepshow was kind of destroyed by Creepshow 3. That's unfortunate, man. It is the worst. That's probably my least favorite movie of all time, Creepshow 3. I think it's a total disgrace. And it's weird, because I can, in some ways, consider this like Creepshow 1.5. If Creepshow 1 and Creepshow 2, were respectively 82 and 87, this movie comes out in 85, and I think was really underrated. A really good, fun horror anthology that I'm going to get into here just in a second. I'm going to get through some of your guys' comments. Creepshow 3 was a fucking clusterfuck of a flick. Yo, I agree, man. I hate Creepshow 3. True Creepshow 3 is... I humbly agree with that. I love Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, and I think it is the true Creepshow 3, because it has that heart, soul, and feel of the first two. But needless to say, I think this movie does too. And this movie is certainly way more 80s than Tales from the Dark Side, the movie. I love the movie, but I think this movie is definitely more 80s, and it feels like Creepshow. A little bit more so, I would say. I like this movie a lot. I'm excited to get into it. The Elm Street Warrior is here. He's the Elm Street Warrior. Good brother. Hope all is well. I know 80s Horror Week is going super good for you, man. So hats off to you, my friend. I'm hoping you're having an awesome, awesome time enjoying your 80s horror this week. I like that intro with Carpenter as the ghoulish mortuary attendant. Yeah, it's fun. He's almost like the Rod Serling. Like, he brings all the segments together. I thought he was fun, and he did a fun job in the role. Hello, IWK83, what's going on, good brother? How are you? I've not seen your name before. Welcome to the graveyard. Also, same here with the Trash Picture Show. I've not seen either one of you guys before. So, Charles, thanks for checking out my show. Humbly appreciate it, man. Cat's Eye is awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. Worst movie I've ever seen is The Garbage Pail Kids, although there are a few others on that list of worst movies. Believe it or not, I wouldn't even put that on my top 10 worst movies. I didn't even mind the Garbage Pail. I thought the Garbage Pail Kids was bad, but I don't know. I feel like I've seen much worse, but I don't know. That's just me. OMG, I just watched Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, earlier and loved it. I love that movie. That's funny enough. That was shown first in the all-night 35 millimeter horror movie marathon. It was that, then the original Hellraiser, then Creepshow 2. It was those three right in a row, and then five more movies like House with William Catt. I mean, that was an excellent Blood Feast. Little Herschel Gordon Lewis fame. That's awesome. We had a great night. But Elvira, Mistress of the Dark's a fucking 80s gem, man. That's cheesy, fun, dark, and just one of those popcorn movies. Turn your brain off and just enjoy the shit on the screen. I love Elvira, man. Long live Elvira. I love her. But with that said, I guess we can jump right into, he's a friend of John Steele. Oh, cool, man. Cheers. I love John Steele. John Steele loves my nickname, the Pajama Pants Playa. I know that. He's a huge fan of my nickname. But I figured we could jump right into this movie. This is, I think, one of the more underrated horror movie anthologies of all time. And it is, I've said this already, it's from 1985. It is Lewis Teague's Cat's Eye. Yes. Starring Drew Barrymore, James Woods, Alan King. I always forget the two guys in the other segments, the Ledge segment. I think one of them, Maze. Oh my God, I'm sorry. I'm so bad with names. Let's see. Kenneth McMillan and Robert Hayes. I'm sorry. I always forget their damn names. But Cat's Eye is, in my opinion, one of the most underrated horror movie anthologies. And right off the bat, I love how fucking meta this movie is. Now, I was saying before how at the time Stephen King was super over in horror society, and he's still over. I mean, to this day, Stephen King movies, Stephen King pop culture, it's still all over the place. And this movie starts off very meta. You follow this cat running around the streets, and he runs into a rabid St. Bernard. Of course, a nod to Cujo, which Lewis Teague had directed before this. Then you run into a car almost hits the cat. The car is a red Plymouth Fury, of course, from Christine. You see the cat run into all sorts of things that are acknowledged in Stephen King's culture, in Stephen King's other novels and films. And I thought that was such a fun meta way to start this. It's almost like Stephen King is saying, I don't need anything else to inspire me right now. I am inspiring myself. I'm going to take nooks and crannies from my own shit. And, even people like Wes Craven did that. Stanley Kubrick did that. Of course, in Clockwork Orange, you could see Alex DeLarge picking through the records, and he goes and passes through 2001: A Space Odyssey, the soundtrack. I thought that was incredible. Just always was a big fan of that scene. And then, of course, Wes Craven in Deadly Blessing, you have the scene in the bathtub where the snake kind of rises out through the water between the woman's legs. 3 years later, it's Freddy's glove going out between the woman's legs. Genius. It's interesting to rip your own self off. That's how big of a master of horror Stephen King was at this time. And I just absolutely adore the meta feel to the opening of this film. And then we get into our first segment starring James Woods, and that's Quitters, Inc. Quitters, Inc. is probably my favorite segment of this entire anthology. It is just so damn intense. That's the number one word that comes to my mind when I think of Quitters, Inc. and when I watch this. It's just so damn intense. I love every single fucking minute of it. It basically stars James Wood, and he's this man, he's trying to quit smoking, so his buddy recommends, hey, try this place, Quitters, Inc. It's super effective. It got me to quit. Maybe it can help you in your situation. James Wood's a little hesitant. He's heard stories that maybe they just have a little bit of a horrific agenda, and they can have to be real son of a bitches to get you to quit your addiction. And you are introduced to Alan King's character, who is like the ringleader of Quitters, Inc. And he tells him, if you don't quit smoking, there's going to be some strikes, all right? So if you relapse once, I'm going to put your wife in an electrical room. And they show you this entire electrical room blasting with fun music. The music in this movie is done by Alan Silvestri, who's incredible, of course. Did the music for Predator, did the music for Back to the Future. Alan Silvestri is an absolute icon. We'll electrocute your life in this room. And then if you relapse twice, well, then we'll throw your daughter in this room. The daughter, of course, played by Drew Barrymore, who shows up in all three segments, weirdly enough, as different characters. If you do strike three, well, then we'll send a very disturbed individual to your house to rape your wife. We keep him around for these sort of special occasions. Alan King is great in delivering all these strike warnings. And then a fourth time, well, we just give up, and he points to his gun. So James Woods knows that he has 4 strikes or else he's out. And the rest of this segment is James Woods trying to put into perspective what is important in his life versus the addiction of smoking. And I can't tell you how fucking horrifying this segment is, because there are points where James Woods gets out of his bed, he's looking around, and he feels that there's eyes on him at all times. Even at all hours in the morning, 3:17 in the morning, he's thinking, maybe, just maybe, I should sneak a smoke. But he looks in the closet and he sees shoes. He sees these rain boots leaking water, and he knows that he's been watched. And I just love the sense of dread throughout this entire segment and all of the kind of mass hysteria that James Woods puts himself through because he thinks everybody's watching him. And it's weirdly enough, the song Every Breath You Take is used in this segment. Every breath you take. Alan King is dancing to the song, taunting James Woods at points at this party. You see all these people smoking around him, and James Woods is having these hallucinations of people dressed up as cigarette cartons trying to seduce him to smoke. Really fucking crazy stuff in this. And man, it's funny, but at the same time, personally, when you think about addiction, it affects all of us differently, right? It's personally, I've never smoked. So personally, I can't really relate to quitting the addiction of nicotine and quitting smoking. However, I tried quitting soda once. I'm a big soda guy, big Mountain Dew guy. I tried quitting soda once. I quit for, and I'm proud to say this to this day, I quit for 7 months. 7 months soda free. I had a cheat drink vitamin water. I drank regular water and or juice all the time. Vitamin water was like my cheat. That's sugar water, right? I swear to you, I shit you not. The second week straight without soda, I was in a fucking grocery store and I walked in the soda aisle and I swear to God, I heard a root beer call my fat ass. Grande, come over here. I turned around and there was nobody there. I swear that root beer called me. And I ran out of there. I ran to my mom's car as fast as I could, man. That shit was traumatic, all right? So only if I'm having that problem with quitting caffeine, carbonation, sugar, Mountain Dew, whatever, I couldn't fucking imagine quitting something like cigarettes, quitting something like smoking, because it's 10 times more effective and it's 10 times more addictive. And that's the horror that I think this segment really drives home. It's what would you do if you were given these strikes as, proponents, right? We'll electrocute your wife. Then we'll electrocute your daughter. Then we'll send somebody to rape your wife. Like, these are the sickest of tactics to get somebody to quit their addiction. And I love James Woods and Alan King's banter in this. He goes, you're a real son of a bitch. You know that? And he goes, well, it takes a real son of a bitch to make somebody quit their son of a bitch habits. And I like that. I think it's just so well done. It's well acted. It's really well directed by Lewis Teague. And I don't know, man, there's just something about this segment that always draws me back to this movie. To me, it stands out as easily the best. I think it's just so fucking well done. And I always like the little twist at the end. I don't want to ruin it. This is one of those movies, I don't know how many people have actually watched this, so I don't know how much I want to really spoil. I'll warn if there are spoilings, but for this one, I will leave it up to you guys to watch. And I just think it's really, really effective segment in an anthology movie, and I think that it's one of those that never gets talked about. I know Tales from the Dark Side, the series, remade it in Bigelow's Last Smoke, and it's not as good, that remake. It's really not. I don't like that segment. It all takes place in one location, like it's all in the guy's apartment, and he's trying to quit smoking. That just kind of lowers the stakes for me. Like, this is so intense when James Woods thinks he's just driving out in bumper to bumper traffic. There can't be anybody watching me. There's a couple to his right making out. He sneaks the smoke, he looks, and the guy smiles at him. That guy has been watching him too. You're never safe. And I thought that using that song, Every Breath You Take, Every Step You Take, I'll Be Watching You, I thought that worked perfectly. Every breath, every cigarette you take, I'll be watching you. So you're never safe. And I just thought that this segment did that excellently. Like that sense of dread, tension, suspension, all that good stuff. It's here, and I think that's a really excellent opening fucking segment. Probably my favorite segment of the movie in Cat's Eye. I got a bunch of comments here. I just don't want to skip anybody. I believe this is where we like. If you could pick an 80s anthology horror segment to be remade into a full movie, which would you pick? Wow, that's a great question. A full. This one would be up there. I'll tell you that. The only thing is, I don't know. Like, sometimes the best thing about anthology segments is just that, the length. Sometimes, if you have to expand something and pad it, it diminishes the mood, the feeling, the pacing, all that stuff can be thrown off if you try to enlarge it. It's almost like taking somebody like an image that it's perfect. I mean, you can see it 2020 and then we got to blow it up, we got to enlarge it, and all of a sudden it gets more blurry, right? Sometimes that can be the case. But man, that's a good question. I'm thinking about it. Personally, I think The Raft from Creepshow 2. Imagine if they made that into a feature-length film. Because don't get me wrong, I love the segment. I think it's perfect. I think it's arguably the best Creepshow segment in the entire series. But I think what you could do is you could have more of a body count. You could have an opening kill where it's just a couple, they get picked off, and then a few more people, and then the warnings from the town, and then maybe these four wise kids who, hey, we don't give a shit. But I feel the need for weed, Poncho. And they swim out there, and maybe, just maybe, that's the rest of your film. Like, all you'd have to do is get to that last half hour, which is the entire segment of The Raft. But it's just a question of how you get there. Personally, I'd go body count, and then I would just throw in some fun stuff. But I think maybe that would be interesting. I'd like to see The Raft if you were ever to make one of these feature length. That's a great question, man. We can open that up for the chat, the Trash Picture Show. Everybody, you can throw your 2 cents into the barrel here. What would be yours? Everybody, including the Trash Picture Show. I'd love to hear all your all's thoughts. I'm going to check this one out tonight or tomorrow. Awesome. That's a way to conclude 80s Horror Week. That would be awesome. Love the James Woods segment. Yo, me too. That's my favorite. I've never been a big fan of Stephen King. He does have good movies. It's just my brother is like an insane fan of him. He's tried to kill me over a few times. I said it and like everything. I definitely think there are a lot of Stephen King duds. Okay, like I'm not talking about them tonight, but there certainly are a lot of Stephen King duds. And I think, Devin, what happens is sometimes if someone's in your ear enough yelling to you about how great somebody is, sometimes it fucking will turn somebody off. No matter how good the person could be, great, all well and good. But if I keep beating it into your skull, man, you might just want to tune me out completely, and it might sour your taste on Stephen King's flavor. I think what can happen sometimes. I've been there with some other filmmakers for sure. Eli Roth's one of them. I do like some Stephen King movies, just there's some I don't like. Oh, I'm definitely in the same boat as you then, man. Effective use of a police song. Exactly. Really effective use. Mucho ecological Pancho. Oh my god, dude. That guy is so much fun in the yellow Speedo. That's no oil slick. It's like somebody put it there on purpose, man. The Raft. Give me the fucking feature-length movie of The Raft. All right, I would be voluntarily be the first victim in The Raft, man. Give me a nice, beautiful woman to be my co-star as my date. We're gonna swim out, get eaten by the fucking oil slick monster, and then bam, your movie started. I just gave you the opening 5 minutes. You don't even have to pay one of your actors. All right, I'll do it for fucking free. The Raft is just an all-time classic anthology horror segment, and probably one of the main reasons I love Creepshow so much. But getting into the second story here in Cat's Eye, it's probably the most least talked about of this anthology. And it's funny because this reminds me a lot of Trilogy of Terror, where everybody always mentions the segment at the end of Trilogy Terror. And the same thing with this movie. Everybody remembers the segment at the end with the troll or the general is what they call him. And I always called it the troll with Drew Barrymore. Everybody remembers that, but everybody kind of forgets the second segment here. And that is The Ledge. And I think, honestly, it's the second best segment of this movie. I really like The Ledge. I always forget these guys' names. I even said it before. You have Kenneth McMillan as Cress, who's this obnoxious, gambling, overweight millionaire. And then you have Robert Hayes, who plays the kind of our protagonist in this. And this is a fun ass segment. Basically, uh, Cress gives this kind of ultimatum to our protagonist. He says, "Listen, I know you're sleeping with my wife, and I'm going to propose a wager, if you will. Come out to the lanai with me. We'll talk about it." And he proposed this wager. He says, "All right, I got three options for you. We got jail. You can go to jail, spend the rest of your night in a cell, your rest of your life in a cell. You can rot there, what have you. Number two, I could kill you right here. Or number three, I give you money, I give you my wife, and I give you your life if you're willing to take this wager, if you're willing to take this bet." And the guy goes, "What's the bet? What do you want me to do?" He says, "You see that down there?" And you look down, and it's like they're 50 stories up. It's absolutely just a scene to be seen. And he goes, "I see the ground." He goes, "Not there, there." Points down to this ledge. And he says, "If you can scale this ledge and go around the entire building unscathed without falling, I'll give you your life, my wife, and the money. What do you say?" And it's a moment that our protagonist, he thinks about it. He thinks about, do I want jail? Would I rather just be shot here instead of humiliated out there? And it's a really interesting scene where this guy says, "I can't swallow my pride here. I've got to go for this. My only way to get out of this with the woman I love, with the money, and with my own life is to scale the ledge of this building." And man, it is so goddamn fun. And it's intense too. But I think what I love about this segment is, whereas the first segment is definitely more horror, this is more horror comedy ish because it's a very fun segment. I have a blast with this. Our lead character, he's going on the side, and the lead antagonist, he starts blowing like an air horn, and the guy's like, "You son of a bitch!" And I love how this actor delivers this line, Kenneth McMillan. He goes, "Just keeping you on your toes," and he says it like 3 or 4 times, and it's fucking hilarious every single time. Like, he puts the fire hose on him at one point, and he's like, "Why are you doing this?" He goes, "Just to keep you on your toes." And I don't know why, but like every single time, man, it cracks me the fuck up. I don't know. I don't even know if it's supposed to be funny, but it's just his enthusiasm and enjoyment of torturing this fucking guy who is battling for his own life, wife, and money. It's just so damn entertaining. It's 30 minutes of tense wall climbing and pure value entertainment. And I adore that about this movie, man. I think it's so well done. I just want to briefly check my mic here because I'm just hoping that I am on the right microphone here. I don't think. Can you all, how do I sound now? Do I sound any better, any worse? I don't know. I don't remember what I had my audio setting on here. I just realized that. I usually set that before the show. Um, I don't know. Maybe somebody could tell me down here, but I could read the comments in the meantime. It's hard to choose which anthology horror segment I would want to turn into a full movie. Yeah, it's tough pick, man. I love it in the movie where the cat is nearly eaten by Cujo and run over by Christine. Yes, man, it's so fucking meta, and that happens in the first 2 minutes of the flick. Absolutely love it. I would love to see the cult segment from VHS2 get a full film. Ooh, that is probably my favorite segment in VHS, the VHS series. That's actually a really, really cool pick. I think that would be an awesome one. And I believe that's the longest one of VHS2. So that's interesting. I would definitely be down to see that. So when that can of root beer was talking to you today, have a mouth and say, "Hey man, drink me. You know what you." It wasn't today. This was a few years ago. But yeah, no, I remember fucking thinking the soda had talked to me, and I was like, "Yo, addiction is real." Like, I just ran out of there as fast as I could, man. That was crazy. You sound good. I sound better. Okay, yep. See, I had that on the wrong. I'm really sorry. That sucks. That's gonna really. I can't change that for later. King Nee Gores in Naheezy. What's going on, good brother? Hope all is well. Welcome to your new channel, man. You can feel free to leave a link to your channel in the description below. I'm sure we have most of the same subscribers, but you never know. I'll put that in the description of the video when I go off the air. But I'm glad anyway that the audio is fixed. Sorry about that. I always check the audio, and something in my head was like, "Wait a minute, you didn't check the audio." Sorry, brain farted there. But this segment, man, it's just a good ass time. It's intense. There are scenes where this pigeon is kind of pecking away at this poor guy's foot and he's screaming, and you see that the little blood is spurring out. And at one point he's just like, I've had it, kicks the fucking pigeon to all, through the field goal, if you will. Thought that was pretty entertaining. And I think this is a really, really well done segment. Of course, a little bit of a spoiler here. The finale of this ends where he breaks into the guy's room, he makes it all the way around, and then of course turns the table and says, now you must scale the outside, the ledge, and all this stuff. Of course, after revealing that the guy was lying the entire time, he put all the money in the bag, and he put this guy's the fucking girlfriend, the wife's head, her severed head, in the bag and rolls it out to him. I thought that was just fucking really funny. I was just like, holy shit, man, that's goddamn crazy. But I always thought that was just a wild visual before the finale. And then, of course, your Just Desserts finale of our antagonist going out on the ledge. And I'm guessing you can conclude what happens from there. But I don't know, man. Always thought it was an entertaining segment, a segment that nobody really talks about. Where this film is lesser talked about, when it is talked about, they always mention the Drew Barrymore segment or the Quitters Inc. I never hear anybody mention the Ledge, and I think it's the second best one of this movie. So really like the Ledge. That's a solid one. We got comments. The crate segment from Creep Show. See more of Carnage. Fluffy caused maybe a flashback to 1912 Antarctic. That's an awesome pick. See, the crate, and that's the beauty of the crate, is I believe that's the longest Creep Show segment at 40. I think it's like 45 minutes. It's definitely the longest segment in that entire movie. And yeah, you add an hour to that, even less, 50 minutes or so, you got you got a 90-minute movie. So I definitely think there's a lot there. And the thing with the crate is it ends for a sequel, right? Like he drops the crate in the water, the crate breaks, we see the animal's eyes light up, and the crate ends. You could do a prequel in 1912 Antarctic. You could do a sequel where this thing, immediately after washes up on the shore, and bang, bang, boom, you got your sequel. That would be really interesting, man. I think there's a lot you could do with it. And I don't know. I think that would be an excellent one to do a feature length film of too. I think all those are good choices. I appreciate you, homie. I never seen Cat's Eye. I need to get on that. Dude, highly recommend. Fun story about this one. I fucking was in 7-Eleven like 2 years ago. And sometimes 7-Eleven has random ass movies for really cheap. Like you'll walk in there, you'll see that movie Otis, like that independent horror movie Otis, for $2.99. Fright Night 2, the remake Fright Night 2 on Blu-ray for like $2. I walked in there one day, saw this one for $3.99 on Blu-ray high def. I fucking could not have grabbed it any quicker. Bought that shit with a Mountain Dew, took it home, watched it. I was like, dude, $3.99. The Blue to this day goes for like 10, $11, so it's not too expensive, but I'm glad I got a stupid deal on this. And I was like, yo, 7-Eleven coming in the clutch with some Cat's Eye. I thought it was a major score personally. And I remember like taking pictures and sending it. I'd be like, dude, I just scored Cat's Eye on Blu-ray. And I thought maybe this would be a lesser transfer. The transfer on this is incredible. Warner Brothers put this out, and usually their transfers are this fucking transfer off the fucking charts. I thought this was an excellent Blu-ray transfer. It looks fantastic. And I doubt you'll ever get a 4K of this movie. This is the best this movie's ever going to look. And man, I got to say, I was blown away by the transfer in this. The sound audio, maybe not as much, but definitely picture quality. I mean, it's off the charts. Yeah, definitely check it out. And Igor, it's a good watch. Yeah, totally. Yeah, they do. They always fucking have Otis, bro. I'm always like, Daniel Stern, where you at, brother? He's right there. He's right next to the fucking Slim Jims, bro. I don't know what it is about that movie. It's always in 7-Eleven. I'm like, dude, I already own it. Like, no thanks. I dropped probably $15 on that years ago. And the Carrie remake. Yes, Carrie remake, the Fright Night 2 remake sequel. And they have like Goodfellas. They have gangster movies, stuff like that. They always have those movies. I don't know why. But yeah, I don't know. When I saw Cat's Eye, I figured signed, seal, delivered. But I guess we can get into the last segment of this. And again, I'll try. I don't think there's much to really spoil. I didn't spoil too much of these. But the last segment is called The General. I always called it The Troll. Like, I don't get The General. I don't like that title at all. It basically stars Drew Barrymore as this kid. She, of course, comes in encounter with the cat. The cat, of course, is what keeps this movie all intertwined. The cat is in each segment. Doesn't play a big vital role, but the cat's in each segment. That's what kind of connects, just like the kid reading the comic book in Creepshow. But she realizes this troll in her room and it's trying to get her or whatever. And I'll be honest with you, man, I've never been a big fan of the final segment of this movie. I think it's a little bit of a letdown in compared to the other two. And I don't know. I think Drew Barrymore does a wonderful job because she's actually in the first segment too, and a brief like intersplicing of the second segment. I like her as an actress, and I think she does a good job in this. But I don't know. There's something about the creature effect that I've never been too keen on. And it's funny because it's all practical. And I'm a big practical guy. I love practicality in my horror. And the creature is all practical and they shoot it all practical, right? They do blown up sound stages so the creature looks bigger. They do really weird green screens to make it look like this thing is this small. It's interesting. Oh, dude, you think the cat's a put? Maybe it is. I don't know. I never even put that together. I don't know. Maybe. I guess so. But I don't know. I just always called this the killer troll segment. I don't know. Like it never. I hate that. I don't like that title personally. I just think it's like I don't know, troll under my bed or trolls in my monster in the wall. I don't know. But I just thought this one kind of lacked a little something. It's really one note, and for whatever reason, it's not as entertaining as the other two. Of course, there are some fun scenes. There are scenes where the cat goes after this thing, and it's on this record player. And the record player starts, and it's of course the song every breath you take. And Drew Barrymore's like faster, faster, and this creature's holding on to the record as it's spinning faster and faster around until it flies off. I thought that was a fun little spot. But overall, man, I don't know. There's something about this segment where it doesn't draw me in like the other two. There's nothing particularly bad with it. It's well directed by Lewis Teague. It's all practical. I like that the monster is original looking. But I don't know. It's just the design. I'm a little on. It almost looks like something Jim Henson would regurgitate. I don't know. Like it's just not. I don't know. It's not the mojo in my humble opinion. Uh, I don't know. There's something about it. Not a big fan of that creature design personally. But I don't think this is a bad segment. And I think I always liked that minor spoiler. I liked that at the end when the kid who's basically crying wolf, it's a lot of that where, oh, mom and dad, there's a stroll in my wall. And of course, they don't see it. They don't believe it until they actually do see it and believe it. I like that they have that in there. I love stories where people find out that the person they thought was crazy wasn't actually so crazy all along. Just like in the Nightmare of 20,000 Feet episode of The Twilight Zone, I always love that everyone thinks he's crazy, and then they do that pan shot over to the wing where you see it's partially destroyed. And Rod Serling says they'll only think he's crazy for a few more hours. I love that. Like they're going to find out that this motherfucker was actually on to something. Thought that was really cool. And I always like stories that when they have that kind of boy or girl who cried wolf, they pay it off like that. Now this person really actually wasn't crazy. Shit was going down and she saved your asses. I like stuff like that. I like when that's kind of minor spoiler there, but I do enjoy the segment a little bit. I think it's definitely a step down from the first two, but overall, I think these three make up to be a really good underrated anthology horror film. One that I think everybody at least deserves to watch once. I don't get why this isn't talked about. I believe this was made on a budget of 7 million, grossed about 13 worldwide, so it wasn't the biggest hit in the world. It actually amazes me this had a $7 million budget. And I don't know, I think maybe this was just one of the under the radar Stephen King movies. Like I love The Dead Zone, but I don't know how big of a hit The Dead Zone was. I think Children of the Corn was a pretty successful movie because of all the sequels it spawned. Granted, none of them are really good, exception of maybe part three. But I don't know. I think it's weird. This came out like right in the middle of all Stephen King's like biggest movies, and like this is one that really gets slept upon. And weirdly enough, he wrote the screenplay. It was Creepshow and this; those were the first two movies he ever wrote a screenplay for. And Creepshow gets all the love and talk that it deserves, this movie never has. So that's really why I wanted to talk about Stephen King's Cat's Eye tonight. If I had to rate this one, I'd give this a solid 7.5 out of 10. I think this is an excellent, really underrated anthology horror film. Really, the first two segments are what do it for me. I love like that first hour, incredible. The last segment, it's one of those like when I watch it, every time I go back and rewatch it, I'm like, it's this one. I don't turn it off, but it's, I don't know, just a little bit lackluster for the last segment. But it is the thing that everybody remembers. And actually, this girl I work with, she was telling me when I told her I was doing this on the show this week, she was like, that's the one as a kid that scared the shit out of me. I don't know. Maybe it's just one that speaks to children more. Maybe that's it. Just didn't hit me in the feels like Quitters Inc. did. But again, that's the beauty of horror anthology. It's that certain people will be scared by certain segments more than me, and certain segments will scare me more than you. That's the beauty of the subjectiveness of anthology horror. And that's why I've always been a huge fan of anthology horror, whether it be Masters of Horror, whether it be Monsters, whether it be Tales from the Dark Side, Cat's Eye, Creepshow, whatever the hell, Trilogy of Terror, whatever the hell you want to get into, Black Sabbath. I think it's just an interesting way for filmmakers to show their palette. And I think Lewis Teague does a wonderful job directing this. He had made probably my favorite Jaws ripoff, an Alligator, in 1980. He had come out with, of course, Cujo, which I believe got him the job for this. And I don't know, man. I think Lewis Teague did a really, really good job. And I thought he was a pretty underrated director at that time period because he took two Stephen King books, well, two Stephen King scripts, whatever ideas, and made them into two really good, entertaining horror films. And Cat's Eye is one of those two. So I'm a huge fan of Cat's Eye. Highly recommend people check this out. Big recommendation for me. If you happen to be passing your local 7-Eleven, check if they maybe have this because I got this for a steal, man. $3.99, great transfer, great movie. Can't beat it. I love me some Cat's Eye. So let's go back into comments here. I don't hate the Fright Night 2 remake. It had good gore and beautiful locations. It's definitely better than the 2011 remake. I hate the 2011 remake, and I'll be honest to God with you, Aiden. I have not seen the remake of Part 2. So if what you're saying is I should pick up the $2.99 blue the next time I go to 7-Eleven, I may just do that. If you recommend it, Aiden, I always value your opinion. So if you do, I will give it a whirl for me. Killer troll that reminds me of Ernest Scared Stupid. Yeah, I like Ernest Scared Stupid a lot. Thank you, Nigor. You see, I have a voice like Fergie, Jesus, and man, so many other horrible things. Like those are the only two positives. It's Fergie and Jesus, and then a big step down from there. Whoever the next singer or whatever you want to say. But I don't know why. I'm a big singer, man. I don't know. You have Drew Barrymore call him the general when she finds him. Okay, that's I actually never realized that, and maybe it just went over my head. I don't know. It's just one of those things. I don't enjoy this segment as much. It's one of those. It doesn't hook me in like the other two. I get the actual opposite. It kind of, I'm like, oh man, I don't like this one that much. I don't know. Just me. Definitely just me. I know that's the one everybody loves. Parents never listen to the child until they actually see the monster. Love that motif in horror. Love it because it's up to the kid to expose the monster to the parents. And I love that kind of convincing and how that storytelling is told in horror. I love it. I think that's really epic. 7.5 for Cat's Eye, fun film, worth a watch. Totally agree with that. $3.99, yeah, the $3.99 blues. I like Fright Night 2 remake. You'll never believe it. The guy who wrote Dario Argento's Pelts wrote that film. Very interesting, man. Very interesting. Kick-ass show tonight, dude. Thank you so much. I appreciate you saying that, man. I'm appreciative that if you want, man, leave a link to your channel. I don't know if I've ever seen your channel. I would definitely, I don't know if you do movie reviews or what you do, but I'll definitely be down to check it out or even comment it later. I'm not sure if you could drop channel links, descriptions or whatever in the chat. I don't know. Ty Junebug was telling me that I have to do something for that. I have no fucking clue. I'm not as technologically sound as most people. I can't lie. But so that was Cat's Eye. And like I was saying before, it originally was going to be 4 stories. Cat's Eye was originally going to consist of 4 stories. And Dino De Laurentiis said, I like all 4 of these stories. However, this 4th story, I'd like to make that into a feature-length film. Fast forward 6 years down the road, we talk about a movie that, again, I think is very underrated. Because sometimes people want to talk about The Shining. Sometimes people want to talk about Carrie, but I want to talk about sometimes they come back. Yes, sometimes they come back from 1991, directed by Tim Matheson, a legendary director of course, Friday the 13th Part 6. Everybody always remembers him from that movie. And I believe One Dark Night is the name of the other movie. I don't know if somebody wants to fact check me on that, but that's a really, really fun 80s one that I haven't watched in a long time. I'm a huge fan of this movie too. And I actually went back, rewatched this Monday night, and I just had a ball watching this one. This is a really awesome flick. I actually have a little bit of a plot synopsis up here. Granted, the computer doesn't want to comply with me tonight. So yeah, I'm not even gonna attempt that. I'm sorry. Um, but Stephen King, sometimes they come back and give you a little plot synopsis of my own because IMDb just won't load for me tonight. I've had numerous computer technical difficulties on the show, including poor audio for the first half hour. So I apologize. But this one basically tells the story of Tim Matheson's character, and he's returning to his hometown after 27 years away from it. And he's this teacher. He's has his doubts, and we don't know why at first, but we are instantly introduced to what happened to him as a child. Basically, he and his kid brother, he's the kid brother, and his older brother, they're walking on the train tracks and talking and whatnot, and they're encountered by these three greasers. And the main one's played by Robert Russler, who I think steals this movie. I think he just does an excellent job as the lead heel. I just love Robert Russler, of course, from movies like Vamp, from movies like A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. Just, I'm a huge Robert Russler guy. I think the guy is super underrated as an acting talent. And basically, these three greasers, they threaten to beat the kid up and give me your money. The total, I guess, cliche nonsense greaser shit. And through some way, shape, or form, the older brother accidentally gets stabbed by Robert Russler, and these kids try to get away. They get in their car. The car won't start. This train is coming, and then whammo, their car gets wrecked by this train. Big old fucking flamey explosion. Of course, the older brother dies, and Tim Matheson's the only one that really makes it out. There's one of the other kids, like the driver of the greasers, he makes it out too. But like, I don't know, I felt that was very unnecessarily in there. And like, it comes up towards the end. I don't know, just not a big fan of that character. But we follow Tim Matheson as he returns to this town, and one by one, these kids in his class that he teaches are getting picked off. And each day, each time one of them's picked off, one of the greasers are coming back from the grave, entering his class, and therefore taunting Tim Matheson's character. And man, this is just a really well done horror film, talking about the horrors of repressed memory, talking about the horrors of what our past are, and trying to run away with that, but at the same time coming to the realization that we do have to face our fears sooner or later. In this movie, it's later, 27 years, in fact. But that's why I think this movie really works, because Tim Matheson's just dramatic performance and his true emotion, raw emotion, just eating away at him. I think he gives in a really, really good performance here. And you really do feel sympathetic for his character. I mean, his brother was murdered in front of him when he was a little kid. And then these kids, these greasers, got whacked by this fucking train. And that's not something that you can just, hey, I'll sleep this off. No, that's something that sticks with you for life. And when you return to this town, like I was saying before, all these repressed memories start coming up. And that's the true horror of this. And then you add in Robert Russler and these other greasers kind of hamming it up a little bit. That's what makes this really awesome and work. Robert Russler, there's just some great scenes where he's taunting Tim Matheson in the middle of the classroom in broad daylight. That's the thing. Like, everybody always goes, "Oh, Midsummer, Ari Aster made you afraid of the daylight." You want to know what makes you afraid? Tom McLaughlin's direction in this, when it's broad daylight in a classroom, you would think the only person in the room is going to be the teacher that has authority. But no, it's Mr. Robert Russler, who just goes, "Just transferred him from Milford." And he puts a smoke in his mouth, winks at the guy. He goes, "Oh, what's the matter? Why do you keep looking at me?" And I don't know what it is about his performance, but it's just fucking magical. He is the most fantastic evil heel in this movie. I think he's so much fucking fun. And
I don't know, man. This one just really works and clicks on all cylinders for me. And I will say that, are there drawbacks to this film? Sure. This was a made for TV movie. However, for number one, it doesn't look like a made for TV movie. It does look like a theatrical film to me. I will say this Blu ray is rather weak. I believe Olive Films put this out. It's a very fucking grainy transfer. I'm sorry. Like, I'm, put it to you this way, I'm a big fan of this movie. I'm thrilled this is out on Blu ray, but I don't know. I would like to see features. This is a bare bones Blu-ray. I'd love to see a Tim Matheson interview. I would sell my fucking Mountain Dew collection to get a Robert Russler interview on this. Tom McLaughlin. I feel like a lot of people would come back and talk about this movie personally. So I don't know. I think this deserves a special edition blue. This is the bare bones blue. Transfer. Like, yeah, I don't, the back, it's kind of cheap looking. I don't know. I picked it up for dirt cheap. This is kind of like one of those burn on demand Blu-rays where it looks okay, but it doesn't feel like somebody really took their time to polish this movie to make it look as good as it could have looked. That's just me. Maybe not though. Maybe, hey, this is a 30-year-old film. Maybe there's just going to be grain in it no matter what. That happens. I can't control that. I don't really know. I don't know the history of this release. So I don't know if someone knows more than I. I've looked. I can't really find too much. But if you can find something, please tell me. But with that being said, I'm glad that the film is on Blu-ray, and I think that this movie it's a pretty solid Stephen King entry. And I think what happened with this one was, and this one is kind of slept under the radar too. Um, I think Pet Sematary had just come out in '89, and I think that movie really set the world on fire when that came out. That's like one of the last great horror movies of the '80s. It's like that and Intruder for me. Those are the last two like '80s classics. 1989. I mean, those two back to back. That's great horror, in Intruder and Pet Sematary in '89. I think what happened in 1990 was it came out, and that was one of the biggest Stephen King adaptations to this day, especially pop culture wise. Then this came out and kind of went by like a fart in church, just kind of came and went. Nobody really smelled it. Nobody really cared. Everybody kind of moved on with their life. But I don't know, man. I saw this on TV as a kid, and I thought it was really, really well done. And I still do. I think this is a really good Stephen King adaptation. It has all of that stuff in there. The motifs of having to come back and face your past, the fun, over the top, campy villain. Good, interesting kind of, not death scenes per se, but I think horrific scenes. So there's a scene where this kid who's like an up and comer in Tim Matheson's class. He comes up to him and he goes, hey man, I got to say, I like learning in your class, but is it true what you say about history? And he's like, what do you mean? He goes, history, you told us it's something that's always doomed to repeat itself. And he says, I just hate it that it's that way. I wish that we could change some things. And I think in a lot of ways that's kind of meta in talking about what this movie means and what this movie is trying to say. It's one of those movies where he does want to come back and change the past. He doesn't want to be doomed to repeat his own history. But it's, unless he doesn't nut up or shut up and come to face his fears and his repressed memories, he's going to lose that battle. And I think that's a really interesting spot to put our protagonist in. But anyway, this kid goes away on his bicycle and the greaser's car shows up out of nowhere and it's chasing him all around trying to run him off the road. And nobody sees this car but Tim Matheson and the kid it's trying to run over. All these people you kind of see, they don't see the car. Thought that was a really well done, effective horror scene. See, Tom McLaughlin knows the genre. And I think that's one of those things where people, they see Friday the 13th Part 6 and they go, oh, yeah, we love Tom McLaughlin. But I kind of think Tom McLaughlin's a genius. And here's why. With Friday the 13th, he reinvented that series. And even though I will personally say I like the first 5 better than 6, I do when it comes to Friday the 13th. But here's what he did. A lot of people say, oh, it's the birth of zombie Jason. It is. But what it's also really aware of is itself. It's very fucking self-aware. Friday the 13th Part 6 is one of those movies that kind of becomes meta. And I know I've seen enough scary movies to see a, hockey mask person run away. It has a lot of that stuff in it, that self-awareness, the over-the-top humor where it's more comedy horror than horror comedy. And that's kind of where I come from with Tom McLaughlin knowing the genre It's that the first five guys that made Friday the 13th films, or the first four, I guess, Minor was in there twice. They were trying to make the same movie, the slasher movie. And with Tom Mcloughlin, he was like, I know all their tropes. I know all their tricks. I'm going to make this my own. And I think that's why a lot of fucking people love Jason Lives. Personally, one of my least favorite of the probably my least favorite of the Paramount 8. But I think Tom Mcloughlin knew his audience, and I think that's why to this day, Jason Lives is so fucking over. It's because of Tom Mcloughlin. Nobody wants to give him credit, but I think he really understood the genre. And then you look at a movie like this and One Dark Night, he has all these gothic horror themes in there and the dramatic side of horror. You watch this and you watch Friday the 13th Part 6 back to back, there's no way you would know it was directed by Tom Mcloughlin because there's not really much humor in this. This is a completely different story. This is definitely feels much more, and it is because it is, a Stephen King story. Very much more dramatic, horror, emotions, psychology, all of that stuff is touched upon in Sometimes They Come Back. None of that stuff's really touched upon in fucking Friday the 13th Part 6, let's be honest. And that's something I always thought made this movie stand out. If they had just gotten a Joe Blow to direct this, or Joe Chappelle, if you will, I don't think this would have been half as effective. But I do think that Tom Mcloughlin brings a lot to the table and a lot to the director's chair. I think he does a really, really good job directing this movie. I can go into some of the comments. Again, I've missed some. Let's see. Grande for president. Thank you, sir. What? Imagine that inauguration. I heard that fucking J-Lo's going to play at the inauguration. Dude, they might give that old motherfucker a heart attack, man. If I see J-Lo's fat ass shaking on the stage, that son of a bitch might keel over and they might announce Kamala the fucking president tomorrow. I don't know, man. That shit's going to be crazy. I'll be tuned in. Fuck the Super Bowl halftime show with the weekend. Give me J-Lo with the inauguration, baby. I can't wait for that. I didn't know Ty still came on these streams. He occasionally shows up. I've seen Ty come up on these streams. Ty's the man. He's good people. I've not seen Sometimes They Come Back. Highly recommend it, man. I think it's a really good one. Sometimes They Come Back, ... over and over. Isn't there like 15 sequels? Weirdest thing is that this doesn't fucking need a sequel. This pretty much, and I won't spoil the ending, but it ends. We'll say that. Like, it doesn't leave it open for a sequel. It doesn't do anything like that. But I do think that it's one of those, like, why? Like, why the fuck would you make a sequel? The sequel that I think they initially made was with Hilary Swank, Sometimes They Come Back for More. Or was it Sometimes They Come Back? One of them, Sometimes They Come Back for More, and Sometimes They Come Back Again. I don't remember. They're both not good. The first one is more like this, and Alexis Arquette plays the Robert Rustler role. And while he does a good job, and I thought the sequel's villains were fun, it didn't work. It didn't have the protagonist that this movie does, and that's Tim Matheson. I think Tim Matheson beats the shit out of Michael Gross and Hilary Swank as a tandem protagonist. I don't know, personally. That's just my opinion. And then the third one is like almost like an in-name sequel only, where it's like in the Arctic, and like I've never fucking been able to figure out the third one. I've seen it once years ago on the Sci-Fi Channel. Could not tell you at all how they connect. Like, I remember putting it on, watching about 40 minutes and being like, what in the fuck is this? Like, it was one of those where I'm just like sitting there like trying to decipher the code. Couldn't do it, guys. It just made no goddamn sense to me, man. I have no unearthly idea. Where can I find this film? I don't think the Blu-ray goes for too much. I picked this up, I think, for like 10, 15 bucks back in the day. But honestly, man, I'm sure you could find this online, like an online free stream, if you looked hard enough. Like, I don't know. I'm not big on streaming movies for free. I'm such a mark for physical media. But I'm sure you could find this free on the internet somewhere. If you can't find it, it might even be free on fucking YouTube. You know, this is a TV movie. It's not something that they're gonna flag immediately. Okay, so what if you were trapped in your favorite horror films and you had to escape each of them? Do you think you would escape all your favorite horror films, or which one do you think you would die? Wow. Let's go back to that one because I want to just say some closing things, but I definitely about the movie, of course, but we will go back to that one, of course. Hell yes, I love Intruder. It's still my favorite slasher film of all time. Pet Sematary is a horror movie classic. Dude, 1989 was a really good year for horror, and it was the last great of, obviously, it was the last year of the 80s, the last great year of the 80s, if you will. I think that's one of the things. Like I think Intruder is the last great slasher of the '80s. I always say that. I definitely got to do a show on that someday. Danny Hicks, man, may he rest in peace. Probably one of my favorite slasher iconic villains of all time. Just love Danny Hicks in that film. Jason Lives is my favorite Friday the 13th film. You see what I mean? That's exactly. It's a lot of people's favorites because he got the audience. He got it. I think even more so than the four men that preceded him because he took their template and made it his own. He had fun with it. I think that's what sets Part 6 apart for a lot of people personally. I don't know why I used to confuse this with Christine when I was younger. This and well, maybe because of the car on the cover. I don't know, and the flames. I could see that. I always confused Firestarter and Christine because they're very like I don't know what they came out around the same time. I think the cover is similar to this, the flames and Drew Barrymore. Like I don't know, for some reason I always confuse those two too. Sometimes Stephen King movies really fucking run together. Like let's be honest. Also, I review movies, action figures, and stop motion shorts if you're interested. That's fucking awesome. I would love to see that. I'm a huge action figure guy. Unfortunately, I don't have the ones I used to collect anymore. But man, I would be really interested. I don't know if you have like Spider-Man villains. Like I'm a big Spider-Man villains. I used to have every fucking Spider-Man villain figure. And Batman the animated series, I had a lot of those. Those were incredible, man. Unfortunately, I've unfortunately been made to get rid of most of them. So it is what it is, but it sucks. Hey, if they ever make another sequel to Sometimes They Come Back, could call it They Always Come Back. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how there's a trilogy of this. Like if you watch this, there's no you wouldn't watch it and go, oh well, what's the next one about? Like it's not one of those type of movies. It's very much a personal, dramatic fucking film. And there's no goddamn reason they should have made a sequel to this personally. But I don't know. It is what it is. But in closing on this one, I'm a pretty big fan of this. I think this is one of the more lesser talked about, underrated Stephen King films. Like I said, does it have some flaws? Sure. I think the budget hurts it sometimes. I think that the fact that it is a TV movie does show a little bit at sometimes, but I don't think that takes away from the good direction from Tom Mcloughlin, the good acting from Tim Matheson, the overall story arc I really like. It can be, I think some would say it's a little cheesy, over sentimental. Like the ending, like the finale is very fucking sentimental, and some would probably use the word cheesy. But I don't know, man. I thought it had a nice heart to it, a nice kind of like wink to you as you left the screen, but not like a sarcastic wink, like just a general, just, you know, keep your sense of wonder alive type of wink. And I thought that really worked. I don't know. I thought that this, again, some people can probably find faults in this, and it's not a perfect movie by no means. But I don't know. This is one I always kind of enjoyed. I think it's a pretty underrated, lesser talked about Stephen King movie. And I always thought it was, just thought it was so interesting when I initially thought Cat's Eye that this was the segment cut and then blown up into a feature length film. I don't know how you could have done this as a short. Like this movie kind of, it actually is like 10 minutes a little over long to me. Like this movie, you could have probably cut out 10 minutes of this, but no, this is a movie that kind of needs to be feature length. I don't think you could tell this story in a half hour. It's just too much happens in the film to really kind of just rush through it in 30 minutes. And that's in my humble opinion. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm crazy, but I do think that this could have actually been a little bit shorter. But with that said, though, I will actually probably come in with a 7 out of 10. Solid score again. I really like this one. I recommend it to people who have not seen it. I believe it has to be on YouTube for free. I would guess. I will go out on a limb and assume it's on YouTube for free. But I highly recommend this one. This Blu-ray, unless you really, really, really love the film, which I do really love the film. I don't know, man. I hope one day that some other company gets their hands on this. This is one I would love to see, like Arrow, which I don't think they'd ever fucking do it. But I'd love to see Arrow get their hands on this, release a proper fucking Blu-ray with features. Get Robert Russler to talk about this role because he's my favorite thing about this movie. Him as the lead greaser heel. I cannot get enough of it. I would love to hear Robert Russler's thoughts because he was cool enough to talk. I've heard him talk about Vamp. I've heard him talk about Nightmare on Elm Street 2. I would love to hear him talk about this movie because this is probably my favorite performance from Robert Russler. Highly recommend this one. 7 out of 10 for me. This one got 7.5. Two awesome little flicks, and knowing the backstory, they kind of connect. I thought that they were a perfect duo to do Stephen King style, lesser talked about ones. And I don't know, just thought they would be fun to talk about. So I don't know. Stephen King episode for you, ladies and gents. Let's see. I'm a big Spider-Man fan myself. I have a lot of videos on my channel about Spider-Man. Yeah, I'm a huge Spider-Man mark. Always have been. For me, it's Teen Titans, the Glenn Murakami Teen Titans, 03 to 06. That's like my favorite, one of my favorite shows of all time. And then I love the Spider-Man animated series. Those are like two of my favorite superhero animated shows of all time. It's just excellent, excellent stuff. And I eat it all up. I've actually been rewatching the original Teen Titans series on Blu-ray. I got the whole series for Christmas, and I'm already on season 3, and we're not even a month away from, removed from Christmas, I should say. So that's crazy, but I don't know. I'm a big fan of that show, and I don't know. Always been a big Spider-Man guy. Scorpion was always like one of my favorite villains of all time. Nobody ever talks about Scorpion, but I don't know. I always thought that was awesome. Would someday love to see Scorpion in a Spider-Man film as the lead villain. And I think there are some things with that story you could touch and tweak. It would be really, really interesting. But I don't know. I don't think we'll ever get that. I think they're so far down the kind of, I don't know how to explain it. Like, those movies have become, I think, so formulaic now, and I don't think Scorpion would ever work as the big main event villain for a Spider-Man movie now. I just don't think people would be interested. I would personally. I don't know. That's the Spider-Man movie I would run out to see. Bring Tobey Maguire back and get somebody awesome to play Scorpion, and man, and of course Mr. Sam Raimi to direct. I think that would be really, really cool stuff personally. But that's what it is. Uh, I miss the original Teen Titans. It's fantastic. Teen Titans Go is awful. Teen Titans Go is the worst spinoff of all time. I will go out on a limb and say that, because the original Teen Titans is in my top 10 favorite, not even just animated, it's in my top 10 favorite shows of all time. I think it's fucking perfect. Unbelievable heart to the show, unbelievable use of characters. And the thing that always stood out to me why I like Teen Titans more than a lot of these other, like the more sexy superhero shows, whether it be Justice League, whether it be, I know the movies aren't liked, but the Suicide Squad. What I love about Teen Titans is the original show is that they were a family. These were 5 best friends that, even though had to deal with their own personal issues and traumas and all this stuff, at the end of the day, it was their love and affection and unity with each other. You got that friendship vibe. You don't ever get that on stuff like Justice League to me. Yeah, maybe they were friends, but it's not the same. It's not, you don't see Batman, Superman, Green Lantern, and Wonder Woman going after the fucking pizzeria after they kick ass and crime. That's just, and I know there are some people, that's for kids. Fine, that's for kids then. I will be a kid at heart forever, because it adds heart and it adds depth, and it makes you kind of just like hanging out with these characters when they're not fighting crime, when they're not technically breaking kayfabe, but when they're just playing video games or talking about personal stuff. I don't know. I love that. That's to me what sets the original Teen Titans apart. There's so much heart and character development there, and I love the unity. I think it's just super underrated, and nobody, dare I say, nobody is able to recapture that same Glenn Murakami feel that the original Teen Titans show had. I think it's a masterpiece of a show. And one of these days, maybe when I finish the rewatch, I will do a top 10 episodes, because I'm a massive mark of the original Teen Titans series. I liked Gargan as Venom. Gargan as Venom. Okay. Very nice. Got a bunch of Punisher figures, Bullseye, mainly NECA, Predator, and Alien. Dude, cool fun fact. I got a NECA figure of Sam on my birthday from this the same girl I was talking about before, who likes the general segment in Cat's Eye. She got me a NECA figure of Sam from Trick or Treat. I marked the fuck out. NECA figures are incredible, man. I got to pick up, I don't know if they have a Roy from part 5 of Friday the 13th, but if they do, I've got to pull the trigger on that. Roy's my favorite. I'm a big Friday the 13th part 5 fan. Scorpion wanting revenge on J. Jonah Jameson, that could work for a movie. I personally, I agree with you, but I just think the marks wouldn't. I feel they're centering the story around J. Jonah Jameson. He's the side character. I fucking can already hear their whiny asses. Oh my God. I don't. To me, it's just that, again, we'll talk about knowing your audience. They like here. They like the center. They have their shit they're going to like. They have their shit they're going to laugh at. If you notice, they all have the same fucking sense of humor. They all have the same outlook and stuff like that. They don't really, expand. I think that's the beauty of comics and superheroes, is that let's expand here. We don't have to be on this central story. Let's go off on a side road, a side mission, a side path, and let's try to tackle this as if it was the main thing. And sometimes you're going to work, sometimes you're not going to work. But at the end of the day, I personally appreciate the attempt. I just don't think a studio is going to put millions and millions of dollars into doing that. That's why I hate the business. It's the old Gene Wilder quote. I love the show. I hate the business. And that's unfortunately, Devin, I think what it is. But personally, I would sign up for it in a heartbeat, man. He turned up at the end of Spider-Man Homecoming, but I reckon they're saving him for a Sinister Six movie. Yeah, that's the thing. I just like, I'm old school. To me, two villains max. Like, I'm old school. And I know people will go, "Wow, you're just fucking, you're an old fart," or you're the one with the condensed mind. I'm sure you could throw that at me. I'm just personally like, I love to see mano a mano, one-on-one. I think when you get into all this other stuff, it could become a bit overkill. Like, I've heard that the rumor is they want to do Garfield, Maguire, and Holland against the Sinister Six. I've heard that. I know Alfred Molina's coming back, who's excellent, and I'm glad he's coming back. And Jamie Foxx is Electro. But my whole thing is, it's just like, is that going to be overkill at the end of the day? Maybe not. Maybe they'll hit a home run with it. I don't know. I think fans are going to love it. But personally, just me being the person I am, old school, I would love to just see Spider-Man and Scorpion duking it out. Give me 2 hours of that, and I'd be a happy camper personally. But I think Hollywood is definitely going that route of a Sinister Six movie for sure. When Scorpion became Venom for a while, they NECA. Oh, they do have a. Okay, cool, very cool. Very nice. When Scorpion became Venom for a while. What do you mean? I'm confused. I'm confused, Ben Grimm. Educate me, brother. I don't think every Spider-Man story needs to end of the world threat to be good. You have to. Yes, see, that's what I'm talking about. Like, I always really like the smaller scale villains. And that's the beauty of having a series, is that you can tackle that. Scorpion had his own episode in Spider-Man. I thought it was a really, really good episode. And I always thought the thing that I liked about that villain is the fact that he was the predator to the prey that was Spider-Man. Scorpions are greater than spiders. And the fact that he was stronger, faster, quicker in a lot of ways, I just thought that was such an interesting dynamic to tackle, because Spider-Man is already behind the eight ball. Here's whereas Venom has similar powers and stuff like that, but he has also the symbiote stuff, and I mean, Venom is just an amazing villain. The Green Goblin, over the top, kind of fun heel. I thought Scorpion was just so interesting because he was bigger, better, and badder than Spider-Man. I always thought that was just you could do so much with that. And whereas Spider-Man would have to dig down deep and do something extra to get the win, to beat Scorpion. Maybe you'd have to cheat, pull old school Eddie Guerrero, Viva la raza, chavito, cheat to pull it over the wool over his eyes. I think that would be a really, really interesting way to take, I don't know, a Spider-Man versus Scorpion film, personally. I hope Marvel don't bin the Punisher because of those shitheads at Capitol building. Sure, they say they can't have Cap's logo gets a pass. I've always wanted to do Spider-Man TV show that was in its own universe. That way I could do whatever I wanted in the show, and not everything has to be a giant threat. I can have small scale stuff. That's the beauty of a series. Like I said, I think that's it's so much fun. You could do so much more. Or just have episodes of him trying to balance his superhero life with his ordinary life. Yes, see, I think that's so much. There's so much more there you can dive into, and that's when you can create an overarching arc. I think TV series give you the time to do that. Context: the rioters with cable ties were wearing Frank's logo. In the comics, Scorpion lost his suit, and they came out with the Venom suit on him, while Eddie Brock became anti-Venom. See, I'm not as educated on comics, so Ben Grimm knows probably way more than I do. That's awesome, though. That sounds really interesting, and I know that they'd probably want to somehow involve Venom. So that'd be really interesting too, man. I don't know. They put the Venom suit on him. That's sick. Scorpion with the Venom suit. I have the Spider-Man PS1 game where at the end Doc Ock has the Carnage symbiote put on him, and the final chase scene is the final level where Carnage Doc Ock chases you throughout the factory before it explodes. One of the best final levels in any video game, man. Just epic, man. I love Spider-Man for the PS1, and I love the sequel, Spider-Man 2 Enter Electro. That's a fun one. But alrighty though. Let me see what you make of the Venom movie, dude. Believe it or not, I haven't seen it. Haven't seen the Venom movie. I've seen the Spider-Man 3 with Topher Grace as Venom. It's funny, Spider-Man 3, I feel like if they had just gone with Sandman, it would have worked. It would have worked just like Molina. It would have worked just like Defoe. Thomas Hayden Church, I think, would have nailed it. I just think for whatever reason that Venom having that in there, I think Sam Raimi didn't want it. I think the studio forced him, and I think that it really hurts that movie. It really hurts that movie. It almost really shouldn't even be in there. I think it should have been way more about the Sandman versus Spider-Man if you wanted to go that route. I heard the Lizard for a while. Wasn't too happy with that movie. I don't like the first Amazing Spider-Man very much. I think that was one of the weakest villains that they adapted to film. I just thought there was so much more to the Lizard. Even on the show, I thought the show the Lizard was such a intimidating villain. And in that movie, I don't know, I just didn't like the CG design. I always liked that the Lizard wore the lab coat and the purple pants. I had the figure of that back in the day. But in the movie, it was just, I don't know, I just hated the design. Really was let down by the Lizard design. But Venom movie, I've honestly not seen. I've really, I would definitely give it a whirl because I like Tom Hardy. But I don't know, I've heard a lot of mixed things. Kind of, I don't know. If you recommend, I will give it a look. If I was going to do Venom, I would have him be more of a monster like in a horror movie like the Ultimate Comics. Ultimate Spider-Man's a fun video game. Love that video game. That's classic. The studio hurt Spider-Man 3. Yes, they did. They crippled that movie because I think if you let Sam Raimi just do what he wanted to do with that film, I think that it would have turned out not as good, but similar to how good the first two are. I think it would not be as much of the black sheep now if they just let him do what he wanted to do. But they wanted Venom. He wanted Sandman. Too many cooks in the kitchen. Like I was saying before with the Sinister Six movie, you have to be fucking careful what you do because what you can do is oversaturate your product. And when you do that, you don't give everybody enough time to develop and grow. When you do that, your movie fucking, in my opinion, can flop. And that's Spider-Man 3 is a perfect case. Batman and Robin is a perfect case. And people will disagree with this. Batman Begins, I think, is a fucking movie that suffers from that. You got fucking Scarecrow as a minor villain. You got fucking Liam Neeson. There's two. Man, I'm not a fan of Batman Begins. I'm just not. Love The Dark Knight. Batman Begins. Dark Knight Rises, good movie. Don't go back and watch it too much. But I think Batman Begins really suffers from that. It's just, again, it's the same thing where I'm just like, fucking pick somebody. Did you pick Scarecrow? Go with Scarecrow. Please go with him. Oh, no, he's only in a few scenes. I don't know. Not a big fan, personally, of that one. Are you pumped for Morbius? Actually, I have not even. Is there a trailer out? I'm not sure. If there is, I'd definitely like to check it out. I know King Migor is. Hopefully, Leto won't be send dead bats and shit to his fellow can. Yeah, Jared Leto's a weird motherfucker, man. I don't know. He's easily the worst Joker. I think the Sinister Six will be better for a TV series because you could build them up more instead of just plopping them into a movie. That's what's going to happen. I think they're going to just plop them into a fucking movie and go, oh, you remember Jamie Foxx? You remember Alfred Molina? That's really I think poor storytelling. When you point at me and go, you should remember this. No. What's happening is I'm gonna point the finger right back at you. You're not doing your fucking job. You need to establish all six of them. And in a TV series, it's much easier to do that, in my humble opinion. Yes, Morbius trailer is out, coming out October. Rocktober. You know what, good brother? I'm gonna watch it as soon as I hop off the air. I would like to give that a look of that trailer. I've got to bounce, brother. You'll be seeing me around, though. Enjoy your night, homies. Yeah, I'm heading out, too, in a few, good brother. But, dude, thank you for stopping by, and congrats on getting your channel back. Batman Begins is a fine film. It's fine. It's a film I don't rewatch a lot. I have probably seen Rises more than Begins. The Dark Knight is awesome. I've seen The Dark Knight the most of those three, and it's by a mile, and it's mostly because of Heath Ledger. But Batman Begins, I fucking honestly don't like that film. Like, I honestly consider that one of the weakest Batman movies. If you guys haven't seen, Nate and I, Horrorboy465 on his channel, we did a Batman retrospective of all the films. That was a fun episode. But I believe I said on that, and I pretty much still stand by this. I think that's the weakest Batman film, is Batman Begins. I know a lot of people will be like, fuck you. But it's honestly just my humble opinion. No, nothing wrong if you like it, but I don't know, not my cup of tea personally. I'm a big proponent of Batman Forever, so it shows you how much I know. But I don't know. Love me some Batman Forever. I think for season 1 of the TV show, they should build up Venom as a big overarching villain along with the Green Goblin. Wouldn't that be something, man? Devin, start writing, good brother. I'll do some voice acting if you need. I'll try to be the Green Goblin. MJ and I, shing, gonna have a hell of a time. Willem Dafoe fucked the world. All right. That's I guess on that note, we can call it a night on the graveyard. But everybody who watched tonight, I wanted to say thank you so much for joining, for the support. It was so much fun going through 2 lesser talked about Stephen King gems, little hidden gems for you on Blu-ray high def. Always fun to go back and kind of walk down memory lane with stuff like that. And I hope you guys check those movies out. They were really awesome. Next week, I will be back talking all things Peter Jackson. Yes, we're talking Bad Taste and Dead Alive from 1992. Super stoked to talk about that one. And my good buddy, the Neon Black Reviews, will be on the channel for that one as my co-host. We'll be asking him all things horror, his origins, all that good stuff. And I'm super excited about that. So everybody have a wonderful weekend. Once again, thank you all for the support. Especially, I want to thank some of the newcomers. I really do appreciate you guys checking out the show tonight. I'll be sure to check out your channels as soon as I click off this. Everybody have a wonderful, safe weekend. Stay beautiful, keep it creepy, and remember, we will catch you next time only on the graveyard. Too sweet, peace. We will catch you next time.